Good afternoon to all those on the East Coast, and a good morning to those of you in the Central Time Zone on the West Coast. Today we have two fascinating speakers, one of them who you know, one of them we want to introduce. Our first speaker is the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. And not only is she the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, she's a fascinating woman, really one of the world's most fascinating Jews. She has built Israel. Her family is from Gibraltar, and they are really Jewish aristocracy in the Gibraltar Jewish community. Not only is she the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, but she's also the special envoy of innovation, whether it's to the East, the Orient, whether it is to the Abraham Accord countries, whether it's to Europe or the United States. And without further ado, we're going to have an opportunity to have a conversation with Flor Hassan Nahum. And Flor, or Deputy Mayor Nahum, is someone who will share with you a little bit of a different angle than we've had over the course of these briefings. And after we have the chance to speak with the special envoy with Deputy Mayor Nahum, we'll of course have the opportunity to speak with Major General Nadav Padan and get an insight and an update on what's happening over the last couple of the days and what to expect on the northern front, on the southern front, and on the home front over the next few days. Without further ado, Deputy Mayor, please, the floor is yours, and it's a great honor for all of us, the friends of the IDF, to participate and to learn and to hear from you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Steve, for inviting me. The Friends of the IDF do such great work, helping us here in our home front and in everything that we need. I was just so grateful to have friends like you and friends like your supporters. We're going through, I think, at least in my generation, the hardest time the Jewish people have gone through. This morning, actually, I started my day talking to a group of Holocaust survivors. And I said to them, looking at you gives me hope that we're going to get past this because of your resilience and the way that you built a country after the terrible tragedies of the Holocaust. Now, I don't like to compare things to the Holocaust because, of course, we're not talking about the same magnitude, but we are talking about the same brutality that we've experienced here on the 7th of October. And it's something that I think it's going to take a long, long, long time to heal and to get over. We really are in the midst of a terrible trauma that we've gone through. But almost to kind of re-traumatize us is the second war that we're fighting. So fighting one war with Hamas, we're potentially fighting a second war with Hezbollah. We're fighting the Houthis in Yemen. I mean, we're trying to control a regional conflagration so it doesn't happen. The Americans are helping us. And then we're fighting the war of words, the war of narratives. How, after 48 hours, when the bodies of those cruelly butchered weren't even cold, the world swiftly turned around and started blaming the victim for the crime. And I'm not a soldier, unfortunately. I have two kids who are soldiers, but I've never been a soldier. When I moved to Israel with my husband, they thought I was too old. I was 27, but they was too old for the IDF as a woman. My husband actually is a dentist, so they did take him because they needed dentists and doctors. And he just finished last year 22 years of reserve duty as a dentist in the army. But I'm a soldier of the narrative war. From the first moment on that horrible Shabbat 7th, I'm Shabbat observant, but when I realized in that morning that it was a really terrible situation, that we were in a very cruel war, that had been attacked, that there were people being butchered every minute of that day, then I had to get into action. And the minute my phone started blowing up with the press calling me, and the reason they called me is because they couldn't find anybody else. I'm not flattering myself that I would be their first phone call. The Prime Minister's office did not have a foreign spokesperson at that point. The IDF were busy trying to figure out what they were doing to save those people that they could save. And so then they called me. And I've been on that war since that very Shabbat morning. And I knew that we had 48 hours at most of mercy, of pity, and then that narrative would change. And after 48 hours, quite promptly, it changed. And we started getting blamed. And at the beginning, I was just explaining simple things like, we don't occupy Gaza. We left in 2005. So what occupation are you talking about? Then, of course, they turn around and say, no, the blockade is an occupation. And you say to them, well, hang on, don't they have a border with Egypt? Why is the blockade anything to do with us? All we're trying to do is stopping the arms of the Iran to get to Gaza through the sea. So, why are we to blame for the blockade that is basically saving us? And on and on and on and on. And of course, when the Israeli offensive starts, then everybody forgets all about October 7th, and it's all about how Israel is killing Palestinian children. And that is the narrative that we've had to deal with now for the best of, over 8 weeks. How Israel is perpetrating these crimes. I mean, of course, they're wrong in fact, they're wrong in law. And so it's my job and the job of people like me to go out there in the media, in the traditional media, and also on social media, two very different animals, and really defend our country and try to make people understand that this is not just the Hamas-Israel war. This is a war of Iran, who's the big puppet master behind everything, behind Hamas and behind Hezbollah, and behind Syria, behind Afghanistan, behind Iraq, behind Yemen, and Qatar and Turkey. It's all Iran, using its tentacles to fight the free world. And sooner or later, we're the first stop on that tour. And sooner or later, we'll get to the West. And so this kind of civilizational clash, tantamount to the Nazi versus the free world, is what we're facing right now. And Israel is on the front lines of that war. And so this is the message that I try constantly to pass over, with, of course, terrible accusations bordering, if not properly anti-Semitic, on Jews and what Jewish people do or are doing in Gaza. And this is the war that you're all involved in, because you are all facing that in the diaspora. You see it in your streets, you see it on your social media, you see the attacks, and it's constant, it's relentless. And, I try to understand what it is. Why is it that the world, and I mean, let's call it the woke younger generation, see Israel here as the criminal rather than a declared terrorist entity where people that they supposedly are supposed to be protecting. I'm talking about the woke, like LGBTQ, like women. Why these people are allied themselves with a terrorist group where there's no women's rights, no children's rights, no LGBT rights, and the ridiculousness of this kind of toxic alliance between the political Islam and the woke younger generation in America. And I've really been delving into this in the last few weeks. And what I understand is simply this, that in this non-binary world that we live in, where you can be 25 different genders, there's only two options in terms of identity. You can either part of the oppressor or the oppressed. And the oppressor, the oppressed, even if we've been butchered, 1,200, 1,300 people butchered, and 240 hostages taken, still 140 in custody, kidnapped by Hamas. Even in that world, in this upside down reality, Jews can never be the oppressed, because Jews are successful. And the Jewish country that is Israel, despite the odds, fighting the odds, are successful. And so in that kind of meritocracy of simple identity, because you haven't merited anything, we are right at the bottom of that list. And of course, the original sin of the woke is white privilege. And for some reason, Jews are part of that white privilege, even though reality and facts and history tells us that we've fought for everything we've ever achieved against the odds as a country and as a people in the diaspora. But, you can't confuse these people with facts. And so that is the situation, the screwed up situation that we're living in. And this is what we're fighting. We're fighting this notion that if you are successful, you can't be oppressed. And therefore, you always have to stand with the oppressed, even if the oppressed are people that call out for the butchering of a whole nation, including Jews. And of course, you've seen that in your faces, in the shameful appearance of the university professors in that Congress committee and the fallout of that. And all of that, you know, I just want to summarize with one thing before, Steve, we can have a conversation. All the fallout of that is simply this. And this is something that I learned from reading the late and great Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. And that is that anti-Semitism is a very clever virus that mutates itself into the scapegoatism or into the gripes of the day. And so 500 years ago, when it was all about religion, Jews were Christ killers. And 100 years ago, when Hitler wrote his book, it was all about ethnicity and inferior ethnic race, which were the Jews. And when everybody was against communism, Jews were communists. And when everybody was against capitalism, Jews were capitalists. And today, in this post-colonial world, of course, Jews are colonizers rather than what we really are, decolonizers of our ancestral homeland. So here we have it, living in an upside-down world where this war somehow ends up being our fault and defending ourselves somehow ends up being a crime. And that is the war that I'm committed to fighting. That is the war that I fight every day in English and actually in Spanish, because it turns out I'm the only politician in the country who speaks mother tongue Spanish. And so everything you see me do online, I'm also doing with Spain and South America. So any of you Spanish speakers out there, you can look for me also in the Spanish news channel, Spanish-speaking news channels as well. And, you know, I feel that God has put me on earth to do this one thing. I don't have a gun, but I have a sharp Moroccan tongue, and that's what I'm using in order to fight this war.
We're very proud of you and honored to be associated with you. You know, Vladimir Lenin used that famous term he borrowed when they overthrew the Romanovs, when they overthrew the Tsarist police and army. He said, we couldn't have done it without the useful idiots. And the population you described that are not interested in facts and that work with these very rigid categories of oppressed and oppressor and are not interested in human feelings and human dignity or justice, they're the useful idiots that ultimately Iran and its proxies have been able to play through all of this.
Yeah.
The first two questions I wanted to ask you, in your role as deputy mayor of Jerusalem, Jerusalem has really become a city of refuge, whether for people from the north and the south. If you could describe what's happening and describe the community there. Yeah. And then the second question, wearing your hat as the special envoy of the Prime Minister for Innovation, where you see the Abraham Accord countries in their relationship with Israel, and as well the potential Abraham Accord countries, where you see them as a consequence of October 7th and the Hamas-Israel war.
Sure. So firstly, you're quite right. Jerusalem, which normally is kind of the powder keg of the conflict, has ironically become a city of refuge. We estimate we have about 50,000 evacuees, 35,000 in about 60 odd hotels. Hotels have turned into essentially the home of many evacuees. With the city of Jerusalem has done two good things. One is that in the hotels, we have set up makeshift schools for children, after school activity, entertainment, etc. And the children who are interested, or the parents who are interested in their children signing up to the regular Jerusalem schools, they're also welcome to do it. No questions asked. You just need your ID. We've opened up an incredibly successful civil society headquarters where we have an enormous room with clothing. Remember that on October 7th, when people escaped to Jerusalem or were brought out of their communities, it was summer. Now it's winter. And so people didn't come with the basics. They didn't come with a winter coat. And so we opened up a free shop, essentially, for any of the evacuees to take anything they want, from undergarments to coats, to books, to toys. It's actually quite heartwarming to see the donations of people, and also the donations of money, which allow us to buy things that people need. And so that's part of our social welfare center. But we've also got, you know, babysitting for families whose fathers are fighting in the war, and we have like a free Uber for the soldiers that need to get to their bases, or for people who need to get home, and all sorts of other department. Of course, a lot of psychosocial trauma help. We've one of the hotels we've taken on as a pilot for a specific psycho trauma support for the families, for individuals, for couples. And so we're working very, very hard. This is going to take a long time to heal, but Jerusalem actually, is, I think, doing what it does best. We are the DNA of all these kind of social solutions. And that's what we're trying to do with the evacuees, make them feel as at home as possible. I myself spearheaded a program asking people with holiday homes in Jerusalem to open up their homes to evacuees. We've managed to also place a lot of people, I would say tens, not hundreds, but tens of people, hundreds of people in tens of homes around the city. I started off by actually offering my mother, who passed away last year. She has an apartment next to me. And I started off by welcoming a family from the south who were running away a couple of days after the October 7th. And when they called me up on the phone to organize the logistics for me to put them into my mother's apartment, I said, well, what do you have? Do you have towels? And they said, the family of 5, they said, we have 1 towel. So of course we equipped the house, we filled the fridge, and like me, many other wonderful people have opened the doors to empty apartments that they have in the city. And so we're very, very busy, and that's how we need to be in order to make sure that people have what they need. So that's your first question. The second question, is a question I'm asked often. I just want a little correction, Steve. I'm the special envoy of the foreign minister, not the prime minister. I think he's busy at the moment. But the foreign ministry, of course, wanted me to use my work that I've done in the Gulf over the last 3 years to help them advance those ties. And the Abraham Accords are not dead. And I want to, people say, oh, but look, they're not supporting us enough at the UN. We have to understand the Arab world rhetoric is very, very important. And the Palestinian cause plays very well on the Muslim street. And so they're not going to turn in overnight into people voting for us at the UN. But let me tell you where they have voted for us. And a few weeks ago, very few people realized that the Arab League met in order to do 2 things: to boycott American assets and bases from the Gulf. And the second thing is to boycott Israel and to freeze and turn back the Abraham Accords. And they couldn't get the resolutions through. It was an 11-11 vote. And the Abraham Accords countries and the countries that want peace with us eventually, like Saudi Arabia, abstained or voted against. And so they have stood the test of this war. And another thing I want to say is that these countries, the moderate countries that have made peace with Israel, like the Emirates and Bahrain, and please God, coming soon, Saudi, are countries that themselves kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course Hamas is an iteration of the Muslim Brotherhood. They kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood from their own countries. In the UAE, it was 10 years ago. Saudi have been doing it since 9/11. And Bahrain had Saudi tanks on the street protecting the kingdom from the Muslim Brotherhood. So these people know exactly what we're dealing with. They know exactly what they're dealing with. And we're doing not just the dirty work for the region, but we're doing the dirty work for the world, because Iran is behind all of this. These are simply tentacles of a regime that wants to bring the world back 500 years and turn the whole place into a big caliphate. And so political Islam is the enemy, Iran is the main perpetrator, and we are fighting the proxy war for the free world.
Thank you. Thank you for that very clear, articulate answer to that question. We're very grateful. You have a daughter and a son who right now are in the Army. It's not easy on you. It's not easy on anyone right now. On Wednesday, we were at Har Herzl, and you just see the traffic between the funerals each and every day, between the Hakamat Matzevot, the establishment of the tombstones, between the Shloshim, and you can hear the wailing, you can hear the tears, and you can read people's faces. And they're all coming to Har Herzl, to Jerusalem, to experience that, to relive the tragedies. It's not easy, not easy.
It's not easy. Look, it's not easy having a generation of young people who are burying their friends, who've got friends whose siblings are kidnapped. I mean, where are we living? My 17-year-old daughter, not the two in the army who are busy in the army, but my 17-year-old daughter built her and her friends here built a gemach, as they call it, built a center for gathering equipment and vests and underwear for soldiers. And 17 years old, everybody's doing something. And it's just awful that our kids have to be living through this, not just the ones who immediately, of course, are affected, God forbid, the ones who are burying their children and their families, but their friends. It's just beggars belief that this is the reality that we've been flung into after we tried. Nobody can say, and this is another misconception I find every day. People ask me, what do you think about the two-state solution? I said, don't ask me, ask them. They've rejected it 5 times. Israel has been willing to make compromises. It's not us, it's them. Ask them what they're more interested in, destroying Israel or creating a state. I think you'll find that it's the former and not the latter.
Thank you. Do you want to share, Deputy Mayor, any last thoughts or any insights for those who are participating in the Zoom and those who will be watching it this evening when we send out the email?
Well, I just want to say that I think in these times, and it's horrible that we have to come to this, we realize that we're one people, one family. And I know that our brothers and sisters in the diaspora are experiencing the grief. I know they're experiencing grief. I know that people are sick with worry. I know that people are falling over themselves to see what they can do. And so that gives us here a lot of comfort, because I know how our brothers and sisters around the world are with us. I know we have good allies. I know we have many of the evangelical Christian community that reach out to me every day. And so with all the hatred that I get, and I can't tell you how much hatred I get online, with a splash of misogyny as ever, I also get a lot of great messages of support, even from places whose governments have not been so supportive. And people are like, we're not in our name. We're not with our government. We're with you. And so that gives us a lot of comfort. And I want people to understand that we will win. It's not even a question. The question is not whether we're going to win. The question is, what price have we already paid? And are we going to continue to pay for being a free people in our homeland? And that really is the question. And I pray every day for everybody's children, for my own, to come home safely, our hostages and our children in the front lines.
To our participants, on behalf of all of us, we want to thank the Deputy Mayor, Special Envoy for Innovation, Fleur Hassan Nahum, for everything you've done, for everything your family has done throughout the generations for the Jewish people, but you in particular. You're truly a builder of Israel. You're a role model for all of us. And we, the Friends of the IDF, we're incredibly grateful for you spending time. You're a very busy woman. You have many things on your plate, for giving us the time and your thoughts. Really just kol hakavod, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. You should continue to have strength doing the many things you're doing for the Jewish world, for humanity, particularly for Jerusalem and the state of Israel.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for all of you do and everything your supporters do. Amen.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to turn to Major General Nadav Padan. Major General Padan, it's been a very, very significant week, both in terms of northern Gaza, southern Gaza, what's been happening on the northern border. Major General Padan, would you share with us some of your thoughts and your analysis of what you've seen over the last week?
So first of all, from a say tactical point of view, there is extension of the operation. If we face two head operation till now, well, we sprayed to four-head operation, one at the very south, close to the city of Rafah and the border between Israel and Egypt. The other is in Khan Yunis, at the center of Gaza Strip, the area of Deir el-Balach, and the extension of the operation at the north part of the strip, the city of Gaza and the town surrounding it. The issue and the challenges right now is to get to the breaking point of the ability of Hamas to control the civilian people, what's happened up on the surface. His military capability are still running under the ground, under the subterranean, but we're seeing, if we spoke a few weeks ago about the first crack, we're starting to see things we didn't see, I think, from 2006 till now. Right at the middle of the city of Rafah, at the middle of the day, calling for Hamas to give up, to get out, to save the life of the people. It seems that we didn't see for years in Gaza Strip. People were afraid to speak. Not to mention to walk at the middle of the day at the main streets of Rafah and protest against the leadership of Hamas. This is not a small thing. The other thing, from military point of view, we're extending the surface area, if you will, of the forces of the IDF, and therefore there is a lot of small friction all along this front line, very long front line of the IDF, and that's why we're suffering for a lot of casualty during the last few days. We had the terrible Shabbat with 14 soldiers that lost their life, and a lot of wounded soldiers. Especially happened at the logistic booth that guide or lead to the fronts of the fight in Khan Yunis and the south part of Gaza, but that's going to be a all new challenge. We're facing changes in Judea and Samaria. There is kind of change in the movement of terror at the north part of Samaria. We heard the news today about terrorists trying to dig a tunnel under the fence between Tulkarem and the state of Israel. There is changes in Jenin. They try to launch rocket from Jenin toward the Gilboa mountain. So they're trying to kind of adapt the method of Gaza Strip and show that they can do the same in Judea and Samaria. So far, it's just, first step, but if the IDF will be fast enough and destroy it when it starts growing, we'll be able to take it out of the story of Judea and Samaria. At the north, there is kind of operational change. The Hezbollah tried to create a new equation, if you will. They understand that you cannot keep the old equation that put one Hezbollah terrorist against one IDF soldier, and it started to destroy empty houses at the kibbutzim. We can see what it did in Kibbutz Revivim, and then in Manara, and tonight in another kibbutz. So the idea is to destroy houses and make damages that will stand in the equation against the great number of terrorists that lost their lives. Sorry for this. Sorry. What we're dealing with is a situation that the kibbutzim along the border between Lebanon and Israel are facing damages that getting closer and closer to what happened in October 7 in the south, without killing people, because most of the kibbutzim been evacuated at the very beginning of the war. So it's empty houses, but the number of houses that destroy or damaged over the last 2 weeks are starting to be a challenge, and that the picture that the people of the kibbutzim and the moshavim along the border will find and see when they'll come back to their home, that's going to be a huge story. When it comes to this second circle in Syria, Iraq, and the Houthi, no dramatic change in Syria. In Iraq, we can see that Shia militia are continuing and extending the attack toward the Western bases, especially the US and Britain, actually. And we can see the kind of international fight that started to develop at the Red Sea, at the Bab el-Manda, and the area surrounding the Arab Peninsula, to the Red Sea and to the Suez Canal, with the international force that built by the US, the coalition that built by the US to prevent attack from the Houthi and keep the naval channel open. Today there were 3 attacks. The US attacked 2 light intelligence planes that look for targets at the Red Sea. We can see different kind of involvement and support by the Iranian to the Houthi. If the support so far been under the radar, right now they even declaring that they're supporting the Houthi and flying over to provide them intelligence. And from the other end, we can see involvement of the Coast Guard of Yemen that block a ship of ammunition that deliver from Iran to the Houthi this morning. So the area of the Arab Peninsula become kind of international war, naval war, that run by the West under the leadership of the US Central Command. And at the north, we're starting dealing with challenges that we didn't deal before, and it's getting closer to the situation that we'll have to deal differently with Hezbollah. And at the south, the operation against the Hamas keep going. It's moving forward. I must tell that from professional point of view, the IDF maneuver is amazing success. We thought that it will take longer and we'll have more casualties. Every person we lost the last few days, it's the whole world, I know. But when leadership, military leadership, make a decision, the leadership have to calculate and assume how it's going to look like. And the scenario that were on the table were a lot worse than what we're facing. The IDF actually deliver amazing maneuver with great success. If we compare this maneuver to other Western country maneuver in Iraq, Afghanistan, it's absolutely look better, by all means. It doesn't mean that it's going to end in a week or so. It seems that it's going to be a very long operation. It's take time to clean all the streets, to clean all those terror cells. It won't continue the same kind of method, I would say, like we start, which means that we'll have less airstrike, less artillery, even less forces on the ground, but we'll have to keep digging and cleaning the streets from every remains of ammunition and every remains of terrorist cells. Hopefully, during the time, we'll get to the leadership of Hamas and will provide the people of Gaza Strip different kind of opportunities and different kind of leadership that lead them to the quality of life they deserve.
Major General Padan, two questions. One is regarding the North. Because of what's been going on back and forth, we know that tens of thousands of Israelis have been evacuated. Are we seeing Lebanese that live south of Litani River, between the Israeli border and the Litani River, are we seeing them moving north of the Litani as a function of what's happening back and forth? That's question number one. And question number two, going back to Gaza, you mentioned that many of the fatalities that happened this weekend were a function of the logistic path outside of Khan Yunis. Could you elaborate upon that and explain that a little bit deeper?
So when it comes to the north, from the I guess the second week of the war, there were thousands of Lebanese that evacuated their home and moved north and then to the Litani River. And not only minorities that are not supporting Hamas, also Alawis and Shia villages and towns evacuate and move north. That's provide huge pressure on Hamas leadership, on Hezbollah leadership. And I must tell you, it doesn't look good, but if you look to the details, Hezbollah could not or didn't succeed with any surprise or attack toward Israel, generally speaking. He launched over 100 anti-tank missiles. And there was few success, unfortunately, but most of the missiles been tackled or pushed out of their target. The new phenomena of destroying houses, that's going to be a challenge that I mentioned, but generally speaking, Hezbollah under a lot of pressure. He lost over 100 terrorists, and you have no story to tell his supporter or the Lebanese leadership.
The rockets that they're sending to the kibbutzim in the north, those are rockets with a trajectory, or those are mortars?
No, it's anti-tank missiles mostly. Actually, he launched a rocket, mortars, and anti-tank missile. But the missile that caused the damages at the kibbutzim and destroy houses in most cases are anti-tank missiles, Kornet missiles. He launched Kornet missile that the range is between 5.5 to almost 9, depending on the type. And a missile like that can destroy a house. And it's very accurate, not like the mortars or the rocket that are statistic.
You said Corvette missiles. Are those Russian missiles?
Russian and French. It's produced in French and in Russia. Yeah.
And then if you could elaborate on what you described happening, the logistics towards Khan Yunis in some of the battles there.
So when you are operating very deep into Gaza Strip, into the main town of Gaza, the chain of logistics are getting longer and longer. And when you spread all over Gaza, you have 6, 7 main logistic paths, and each one of them are a few kilometers. And to defend them, it's quite a challenge. We already clean most of the area, both sides of those paths, but it's not that difficult to sneak with 2 terrorists and 1 RPG and create a damage. So that's a challenge. There is IDF moving forces right now to deal with with this challenge and defend those line of logistic. But yesterday, from that perspective, was a very bad day.
Major General Padan, thank you for the analysis on the four fronts in the south, the north, what's happening with Tulkarm, as well as the geo-global, the Iraqi, the Houthis, the Syrian front, for giving us that analysis. Do you have any last thoughts you'd want to share with the participants, those who are partaking in this briefing?
So there was one thing that I totally agreed with the first speaker, that we're going to win. And the only question is a question of time. And we're going to win because we have no other option. We didn't pick or choose this war. We've been forced to deal with it. We have no other choice but to push Hamas out of our border. And by the way, I totally agree with the understanding that the border is not a border of Israel. In that case, it's the border of the Western world, of the civil world against against evil, if you will. It's simply the bad against the good. I cannot find better way and simple way to say it. And we cannot allow those crazy animal to create a monster along our border. And as been mentioned, nobody wants them in their country, on their border, not the Saudi Arabian, not the Egyptian, not anybody else. So there is pressure, but don't mislead yourself. We'll have the time to win Hamas. Everybody wants us to win Hamas. Even moderate country, they're trying to do bridging right now to lead negotiation. They're doing so not to save Hamas, they do so to position themselves at the tip of the iceberg of the Arab world. Everybody at the moderate Arab country wants us to win it. So I believe that we'll have the time, not without friction, but we'll have the time to win Hamas, and we have to be patient and to keep on supporting our soldiers, our brave men and women that actually fight the fight of the Western world for all of us.
Thank you. And to all those, the friends of the IDF who are participating in this briefing, we want to wish each and every one of you a good week. Please have in your prayers and your thoughts the soldiers. It's been a very, very challenging weekend, as Major General Padan said. We've lost an incredible number of soldiers. On the other hand, there's been great strides that have been made. The Army keeps asking us almost on a daily level for support, for urgent needs, for humanitarian and medical needs. And please continue with your generosity. Again, every penny, every dollar that's given goes straight to the Army. There is no overhead. And we want to thank you for your support of the soldiers. And as Major General Padan said, this is ultimately not a battle for Israel. It's a battle for civilization. It's a battle that will define the 21st century. Wishing the soldiers safety, wishing them peace, wishing them strength, and wishing them the ability to win this without many fatalities or injuries, and wishing each and every one of you a good week. We'll be back with Major General Padan on Wednesday, as well as with another guest speaker. Thank you.